Let Them Be Naked, a plea to change our crazy fashion culture. That is today's show. Are you?
Hey, good. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to chat to you. When your team reached out, I had just heard of the film, and I realized we hadn't done a show on fashion and talked about fashion in a couple of years. And I think it's a really interesting conversation to rekindle often because we can get caught up in life. We can start going fast. We can start thinking, oh, it's just one t-shirt. We can start thinking, oh, but my kid needs it for a play. And it
Right.
can be very easy to get swept into the cultural norms again and try and make our 80-20 lives like all live in the 20% again all of a sudden, rather than really focusing on change. So my first question for you is why, Jeff, why interested in toxicity in fashion? And fashion design is obviously your gig. Beautiful clothes, by the way. Oh my
Thank you.
goodness.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about your journey exploring your own desire to make art, but then how to make a positive imprint both planetarily as well as bringing people joy in beautiful clothes?
Sure. No, good question. I think honestly it has to do with where I grew up. I grew up in Tennessee on a farm, a horse farm. So that connectedness to nature kept me grounded in the sensibility of what I created, how it affected others and the environment I lived in. So my grandparents were, one was a creator, designer, painter. The other one was a scientist, chemist. Worked in the Manhattan Project. So I gathered their kind of energy and just I started designing for bandmates out of Nashville. And when
Hmm.
I started doing that, I was like, oh wow, this is a super toxic industry. And I
What did
kept
you
questioning.
first uncover? Like what you're
Uh,
designing and
First thing I did was they asked me, I did, stage clothing, but then they asked me to help with their merchandise. They're like, Jeff, our merchandise is ugly. We wanted to represent our band. I was like, cool. So I had the first Mac computer, learned Illustrator, Photoshop. So I designed the band t-shirts. I did all the sketching and designed all the prints. And then I went to print it at a printer. And I'll never forget this. I was like, well, what's the ink made out of? And they're like, they couldn't really tell me. So then I looked it up. I was like, oh, plastisol. Well, what's in plastisol? And what's this heating process? And why are these guys wearing masks on the other side of the dryer? And why is this kid who's like in his 30s look like he's 16 and breaking out with acne? You
mm,
know, my mind just works that way. I was like, why? I didn't understand. Nobody could answer it. Everyone's like, oh yeah, during the non-winter season we open the windows, but the rest of the time it's closed. I was like, wow, it's off gassing. I
mm,
could barely stay in the shop to see my t-shirts printed. I wanted to analyze everything coming off the printer because I wanted to fix things.
mm.
Um, and then I saw the gnarly chemicals they're spraying to clear the screens, and I was like, huh. So it taught me early on, it's like, well, okay, they choose productivity and cheaper ingredients over what's safe and more natural. So I went to Wilflex Ink in Atlanta, Georgia, and say, hey, can we do organic compound ink? And like, yeah. And so I met another guy who was similar to me and a chemist and background in science, and we figured out how to do the organic compound ink. And that was great. So it showed me there are solutions. It's just not in the mainstream. And obviously
Mm.
that ink is more expensive to print band t-shirts. So you got to add $1. But I'm like, what consumer wouldn't pay more for something that's healthier for them and the environment consciously? But there's some consumers that will, and some that won't. But it taught me early on, well, my responsibility as a designer creator is that I'm not gonna go down that path. I'm gonna go down this path and
Mm.
hope people come alongside or see the difference and smell the difference because now they're talking about the PFAS that are in that plastisol ink. And you think
Yeah.
these little baby t-shirts and they're printed with this cute little daddy's girl and
Mm.
they're off gassing. And I'm like, and I had a child early on. I was 20 when my first daughter. So I was in there making her clothes too. And I was like, wow, no, these dyes and this. And anyway, so it started early on in my career. It wasn't like a shift later.
Right. Yeah.
I knew as a farm boy, I was like, I can't, like, consciously and ethically, I couldn't work in my field and be a designer, a creator, if it was gonna, what I was making would hurt people. So
Mm.
yeah,
And I often think, to your point of like we would if we knew about it. I
sure.
often think, well, some people then can't, of course. Like, I mean, look at the minimum wage in the US, still struggling to get over $20 an hour for a
Yeah,
real life of not having to have 15 jobs just because you've got a couple of kids.
right.
And I think everyone who has the privilege to make the decision should, to create market demand, to create scalability.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can stretch.
Uh,
But it's actually about like moving away from this, I've got to have lots of things mentality as well.
sure.
So there's
Sure.
quite a few barriers to break down, both psychologically and economically, for us to get
Yeah.
there, I often think.
Yeah, that's a very common question. I think there's three tiers. So I think obviously people of means and wealth can afford to buy these, these hemp products or these natural products that are going to cost more now.
Mm,
Once it flips, it'll be cheaper,
yeah.
honestly. Um, and then I think there's a middle tier, we don't think about is that, for example, it's like eating out. Like you can go to the nice restaurant or you could go to fast food. Well, fast food is going to be cheaper, but worse for us. You can go to a nicer restaurant, probably get something more clean, or you can go to the grocery, choose what you want to make and go cook at home. So a
Mm.
lot of people don't make their own clothes, but for example, like this shirt I'm wearing here, made of hemp, dyed with eucalyptus in my backyard. I could
Of
buy
course
this.
it is.
Yeah,
Let
I
me just
could.
take a second to go do that myself, Jeff.
Well, I was gonna say it's the easiest dye to
Yeah.
create. I could tell you how in 30 seconds, but all that to say is our grandparents used to do that. Like,
Mm,
so this shirt, long sleeve, I'd put a little poetic frills on it, but it'd be a yard and a half. So a
mm,
yard and a half of hemp technically would be $15.
mm,
Now, to dye it from eucalyptus is free. Water's
mm,
free, the leaves are free. So it's just my time. So if I wanted to cook at home, then it's my sew time. You have to learn how to sew, but this is simple construction.
mhm.
You could make your own clothes, and this would cost me $15 to make. And this is 8 years now, and I ride horses in it, etc. So I think we're missing that. We don't talk about that. We talk
Yeah.
about buying cheap fashion. So let's say H&M Zara made this shirt, knocked me off, which they always do. They would charge $10 for this shirt. I
Mm,
can't even buy the fabric for that amount. If I make it and sell it through Prophetik, with my time and sew time and all that stuff, it'd probably be like a $75 shirt,
mm,
right? So you got $75, you got $10, but I think there's the middle area, which is $15, $20 to make it
mm.
yourself. So that's something I really want to talk about because nobody has talked about it. And I think we could also focus on that. So there are solutions for people that are strapped and living paycheck to paycheck. And it
Yeah.
would be fun too. You create with your friends, with your family, with your kids, you
Mm,
know.
yeah. And bringing back an art.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, then I think, okay, I'm challenging it in the sense that it's healthy conversation, because then I think about back to minimum wage. Like if you're then working 16, 17, 18-hour days, we don't got time to make our shirts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so I think our whole system is actually geared towards, I don't have time to think about it. I certainly don't have time to learn how to sew and make something. And I
Mm.
can't afford to save up. They need it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for these harmony days and all these productized days that we now have
Yeah.
in our schools,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. So it brings me back to, we need a societal shift.
We do. And yeah,
Mm,
and I agree with you 100%. And granted, I was a single dad and I learned to sleep 4 hours a night, do my
yeah.
business, sew up gowns and dresses, get my Isabella to school and make her clothes too. And but I was like, it wore me out. But not saying
Yeah.
everyone should want to do that. And I get and I may offend some people here, but the addiction to convenience. I think we are
Yes.
addicted to convenience and we're
Yeah,
addicted to cheap price points.
we
Because
are.
if you look at clothing, we're still buying t-shirts for $7. We bought t-shirts in the 70s for $7.
Mm,
Gas, food, hotels, all those things have gone up with inflation. Why
yes.
hasn't our clothing? So you're actually talking about a misconception of true cost. Because actually,
Absolutely.
if you base it on the 70s versus 2024, a t-shirt should be $40 now. Should
Yeah.
be.
Mm,
And I can make a hemp t-shirt for $42.
mm,
So I'm actually in line with where it should be. Problem is we're still using cheap ingredients that are toxic, and we're exploiting workers in third world countries with the cheap, not fair price, and it's just like that somebody's paying for that price point. And
always.
so if we move, like you said, we need a shift. So we have a shift and we outlaw, it has to be fair trade, right? Fair labor. And then are outlawing the toxic ingredients. So that's going to shift to where we have to use better fabrics and fair labor. So the t-shirt would be $40. And then you might get people upset at that, but then I think they will buy less because that $40 hemp t-shirt, I guarantee it 100%. I've been doing this 28 years. It will last, and I test everything myself. I ride horses in it, work out in it, like everything. And
Mm,
those hemp t-shirts last 8 to 10 years without one hole.
mm.
Those synthetic t-shirts do not.
No, they do not. Yeah.
H&M, they actually teach their designers design obsolescence so that they fall apart, drive the consumer back into the store. Now, some consumers may not care, and that's fair. And some people just maybe want to wear it 3 or 4 times. But then I think, well, we shouldn't really comply to that behavior because that's not good for everyone.
Mm,
We can't sustain that type of lifestyle.
yeah.
Our planet cannot. We shouldn't have that amount of toxicity around us. Because the one thing people don't talk about is like, and I guess I'm the weird one. I only think about this, but when I'm in a plane, this
Yeah.
sounds weird, but everyone around me is off gassing. I'm
Mm,
wearing my hemp, my natural dyed clothing. But imagine like the old days where people could smoke on the plane. Those
yeah.
chemicals are off gassing off those clothes. I have no choice but to sit there and
Mm,
receive those chemicals into my system when I strive every day not to have them in my system because we have bioaccumulation levels. So the idea is to get away from them as much as we
mm,
can. So if I want to go in public transport, I have to receive that in. So
mm,
it's interesting. So it's like, well, what's fair there? Then I'll have more health implications later because I'm traveling a lot and receiving that in. Like I go to the gym, same thing. People are wearing the Lycra, the toxic workout clothing, and like hot yoga, for example. And I tell all my
mm.
instructors, like, can I sit by the window? Can you open the window? Like, Jeff, that defeats the purpose. I'm like, yeah, but they're off gassing. And they just look at me like I'm crazy, you know. And and
You're probably making a whole bunch of people terrified, but I really
yeah,
think it's such a valid point.
but
We talk
it
about it with fragrance a lot in
yeah,
this
it's the
community.
same.
Like that's something people understand.
Yeah, if you
Mm.
hug someone and their fragrance sticks with
Oof.
you, well,
Yeah.
there's a synthetic component to that
Mm.
gives it the staying power, and it's not
Mm.
healthy. It's not healthy for
No.
the wearer, and then it sticks on you, and then you receive it. So the best way to put it is like secondhand smoke. The ammonia gas is the worst part of it. So that's why they
Mm.
outlawed it around buildings and schools, etc., because it's not fair to receive that into your lungs. So I hope we get there one day with clothing, but we're far away off because people don't understand that they think that
Mm.
like they used to think that the toxic paint that dried on the wall, once it dried, it didn't off gas anymore. And now people are realizing, no, that's not the truth. You
Years and
know,
years. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just
Mm.
like, how much longer are we going to go in today's society and just be duped by the chemical companies that think that these clothes are okay with the same chemicals that are found in the paint, that are found in pesticides, like, and we have them on our skin.
Mm.
And we've proven through peer-reviewed science, 37% is absorbed through our skin into our system.
Yeah.
So, people haven't done the off-gassing study yet, but that will be, in the near future. But anyways, so sorry to go off on that tangent, but
No,
it's,
it's a really important tangent, Jeff. And I always say, got to wash your clothes when you get them first. Even if they're good quality, like the treatments in import and export, to prevent pests. And there's just so many parts of the chain that get affected with toxins.
yeah,
So a lot of people get that, but kind of like the paint drying, Like, this t-shirt, gosh, it's linen. I know that much, pure flax linen.
Yeah.
But I didn't think too much other than, oh, I like that color. I will be honest, I really
Yeah.
didn't. So I don't know. I just have to hope that the French store my sister bought it from me from overseas. When they say organic, then maybe that includes the dyes as well, but maybe there's a loophole that it doesn't. Like fashion really is, it's kind of like putting free range on eggs, right? It's so
Fair.
vague. And
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of space for people to go, well, the linen's organic. That's what we meant.
Yeah.
From a labeling perspective, they don't have to then disclose that the dyes were as well
Sure.
necessarily, unless it's GOTS certified, right? And so that's why we have some levels of ambiguity that are
Yeah.
probably part of the problem because a consumer can't easily
Mm.
decipher and analyze to decide.
Yeah. Yeah, that's intentional. There is definitely not any regulation with clothing. There's
Mm,
people think there is, but there's not. I could
mm,
literally put anything I want on this shirt as far as a label, and nobody's going to check it.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I can tell by looking at the shirt, it is synthetically dyed. It could be what they
I
call low.
know. I'm
It
like
could be,
listening to you talk, and I'm like,
yeah.
God.
It could be low impact, but think of it this way: taking a beautiful like natural wood wall, and then
Mm,
you put paint on top. It's
yeah.
gonna act like behave like the paint, not the
Mm,
wood. So the wood is porous in nature, it'll breathe, it'll stretch with humidity, etc. The paint, once on top, clogs up the pores, it'll
mm,
behave like that toxic paint.
mm,
And that's the unfortunate bit. So they do one step well, the other step they don't do well because, quite honestly and fairly, it's not on the market. So it's cost prohibitive right now to do
mm.
plant dyes, which is something we're working on. But I would say just look for undyed until they get to that place.
Yeah. I've never thought to myself, whoa, I wore the wrong t-shirt for that interview before, but I do today. My gosh. Okay. And I do actually tend towards simpler colors because it actually just feels more peaceful. And I think psychologically that's telling us something as well.
Well,
Mm,
I had six professors over yesterday here at the beach, and I was teaching them plant dyes, and we literally went around the property, grabbed stuff, eucalyptus leaves, we did some indigo and stuff, and they were just like smelling eucalyptus, and just breathing as I was heating it up. You let it boil for 45 minutes, and they were just loving it, and they were asking like, does it stay on the clothes? And like the smell does for like the first 3 or 4 days, and then eventually gradually goes away, just like a natural oil. But
mm,
the energy it creates, there's something to it,
yeah.
versus a flat color that's made of petroleum.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think the energetics of clothes is a very interesting subject, different materials and what they give us, different natural origins and what they kind of transmit to us. And it then we have the opportunity then for our fashion to be grounding, literally.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. No, it's very true. I wear eucalyptus on the plane because, and I reapply the natural oil to it. But yeah, it does something. And people comment around me too, just like essential oils that you dab on your wrist. And, there is something to it.
there is. And so let's talk about the film,
Sure.
because it's it's confronting. I think a lot of people who'd be listening would have watched fast fashion films, read books like Lucy Siegel's work at True Cost
Yeah.
and other things in the past that woke us up to, well, we got to change some things here. What did you feel wasn't yet said that you wanted to express in the particular way you did
Sure.
in Let Them Be
So
Naked?
it's funny. I actually talked to Lucy Siegel yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, yeah, she's
Hmm.
great. So she has a bit in the film as well. But yeah, so I kind of when I got in to this space, I didn't realize there was a couple of ladies already in that space trying to create a movement.
Hmm.
And so when I went to London and showed at Fashion Week for the first time, I met Lucy Siegel and I met Livia Firth and
Yeah, I love Livia's work. She's
I met
amazing.
she's great. I met
Mm.
Susie Cameron later. And so there was this energy going on, and they're like, "Who's this guy?" You know, it's funny. I was like,
New kid on the
"Sorry."
block,
It's
Jeff.
like, "Sorry,
Yeah.
ladies. I just make things of plants and I show them at Fashion Week because they were in the space, but they were writing books and writing articles and doing these contests, and nobody was designing and creating and doing a collection. So I showed it at London Fashion Week, and people were like, "This is a plants," and it was really cool to visually see it on that platform and see it kind of compete with the synthetics. And anyway, so we all kind of got together and got behind this energy, and I felt like through those years, I could only do so much catwalks, and you get 300 people, you get some articles, you get some coverage. But all in all, you maybe reach 1,000 people.
Mm,
And then I realized, except Shanghai Fashion Week, it was crazy. But um, I think that at basically after my mom, she passed from her breast cancer, it's been about, I guess it's been 4 years now. So um, what that did, it propelled me a new energy, new fire to say, okay, I know the only true way to create change is through film, because I have a lot of
mm,
friends in film and I see the impact, and obviously it lives beyond you. And I was kind of getting to a point where, and I'll just be, just transparent. Like, I've always invested in myself and I never took on any financing or any money. So I've been self-supportive as an artist for, these 28 years, catwalking for 12, 13 of those. Catwalks are not cheap and you never get your money
no,
back. So,
they really are not. Yeah.
and and it's a feat, honestly. And I
Mm,
produce all my own shows, and because I see it as our 12, 15-minute theater show that we have to give it our all. So I would
mm,
always bring in live bands and, obviously cast all my models and create the vibe, this theme, and set the scene at the theater. I did shows at Edinburgh Castle, and I love at Chateau Fontainebleau. And anyways,
mm,
so, but I realized quickly that was great from an artist perspective, but if I wanted to reach the masses, I had to do a film. And
mm,
so I basically went to Susie Cameron and said, "Listen, I know we talked about it years ago because she's actually been with me on this beach where I grew up with my hippie dad, and so we should work together one day." And so I said, "Listen, I'm not getting younger. I don't know how much longer I can continue catwalking." I go, "It's time. We got to pull
mm,
this film off." I was already out fundraising through the Redford Foundation, and so they came in and helped me do the final raise so that we were able to start production. And literally a week later, I like shut off and we started filming. I got my small
mm.
team together, and I really thought it was crazy because from start to finish, a year and 2 months. So
Wow.
we have it in the film festivals because I knew it's all about timing. And so it's called Let Them Be Naked. So I feel like it's better to be nude than dressed in synthetics.
Mm,
And yeah, so it's been an amazing, amazing response. And because I already know that there's counter documentaries being made from the industry.
mm,
So they're trying to, basically steal the narrative and say, "Oh, circular, economy is the way forward," and recycling polyester. I'm like, huh, they don't talk about, can you actually do that and how much percentage? And, there's
mm,
all these smoke and mirrors that the industry is very good at, and they have more money than us and more PR. So I was like, you know what? I got it for my mom, for my hippie dad that passed, for everyone else I know that's affected. I got to get this out there before they try to counter it, to give people back the power of choice. And, whether you believe the science we bring to it or not, you hear stories from people that were affected by Victoria's
yeah.
Secret sprawls, by Delta Airlines uniforms, and what actually happened when they tried to bring it to change.
Mm,
And you talk to scientists who've been working on this since the 70s and trying to bring, energy and change with it, and how
mm,
they got derailed. And it's like, and you hear about Sidney Ross, who did a study in Fiji with women in bras and did a bra link to cancer, and he got buried and just made fun of. And now he's living on an organic farm in the Big Island, Hawaii, a nudist farm. It's great.
Mm.
Um, but
Literally decided
clearly,
naked's better.
I'm off. I'm off. But what it did, it derailed his impact. He was like, nobody wants to receive it. So, he's great because he was like, you know what, Jeff, I'm old, but I got a fight left in me. So he's now re-engaged
Oh,
because it
how
is about
amazing.
timing. And I think people and my hair, hairs rise on my arm, but I think people are ready for it.
Mm,
I
I think
think
they
we
are too.
know too much. It's kind of like the Renaissance era where they were like the religious sect was hoping everyone's kind of dumbed down and couldn't understand Latin, and then they started realizing, learning more and more, and they realized like this is greenwashing and this is not true and this chemical is toxic. And so I don't think people will get away with these fake certification programs anymore. I think there's a liability issue when you make a product out of these toxins and you don't tell people.
Mm,
There at least needs to be warning labels or ingredient labels on it, just like food. Because
yes.
if you're sitting in the sun and you're sitting in a nylon swimsuit,
Mm,
that's not a good thing.
mm,
And it goes in the book, and I'd have a book out as well with the documentary, but it goes into the details of that, like why isn't it good and what it
mm,
puts into your body. So without getting in too much in detail, but it's something that we need to recognize because some people are more sensitive than others, so it will affect you differently. That's why you can't pinpoint and say bras do cause breast cancer.
mm,
Do they have carcinogens in it? Absolutely, 100%. Does your body receive those carcinogens into the system? 37%? Yes, absolutely. Now, and then you go into the science of it, like the fatty tissues that are in the breast. So when the body receives those chemicals into the system, it receives it as an estrogen, doesn't know what to do with it, so it grabs it to protect you, throws it into the fatty tissue to store it. Well,
mm,
then guess what? You have a nylon polyester bra that doesn't breathe. So it acts like a warming. It warms up your breast. So it's like a greenhouse. And then the constriction from the straps, your lymphatic system, are like hoses that are super sensitive. So you put any pressure on them, they shut down. So the
mm.
lymphatic system's not operating. So it's not moving the toxins out. So can correlation? Yes. I mean, it really shows like, but what the wild thing is through all this research with the book and the documentary, and three other scientists said it, plus what I've researched and found, and Randall Fitzgerald who helped me with the book, not one study on bras of breast cancer.
Mm.
That'd be like, oh, what? No, it's not the cigarette, doesn't cause lung cancer. Let's just skip that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
no, that is like an educated, preconceived, like, let's don't do a study on this.
Mm,
And when I found that out and my mom died of breast cancer, I'm like, wow, this is goes deep.
mm.
There's a
Well,
reason.
yeah, it's awful, and I'm so sorry you lost your mom to breast cancer, Jeff. That's tough, and I think environmental toxins are tricky because like I call it the soup principle, and it's like how many ingredients have you got in your personal soup, and what can you take out? Like what's easy to take out? Let's keep taking things out until you've got a really simple, very healthful broth. That's the goal.
Yeah.
But the modern world is a soup full of stuff, and it's quite hard to actually live consciously knowing that and still feel safe, like a deep sense of nervous system health and safety.
Yeah.
Um, it can very quickly make you very stressed out and very scared. And I'm always conscious of that as well. And I think
Mm.
we're so lucky that we have so many designers and brands now trying to do better and trying to look at what could be better. I really wish consumers realized just how much of a hold lobby groups and campaign finance played into the reasons we have the world we have today. Things like
Yeah.
Citizens United that passed in America, it kind of things like that made us a bit of an America light over here with how we view chemicals and let them just do their own safety
Mhm.
data sheets and say, yep, we've tested it, it's all good. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How far away do you think we are from having a piece of clothing on a rack, a t-shirt, this t-shirt, and me being able to see every ingredient, not just the flax organic linen?
Um, I think it depends how this plays out the next five
Mm,
years.
yeah.
The first case we had was Thinks Underwear this year in the US that they advertised that their product was um, basically safe and
Mm.
non-toxic. Okay.
Hmm.
And then they got challenged and they studied the underwear and they found toxins in it. And therefore it wasn't safe and it wasn't toxic free. So they won the lawsuit. So
Mm.
it's the first time that they won because they didn't make it about the person, the individual's health that was wearing it. They said you're advertising as non-toxic
False
and safe.
advertising.
It's
That's
false
what we can go
advertising.
after. Mm.
So that scared the industry. So there's
Mm.
a liability. So you'll see they started taking these kind of fake false statements off, like organic and natural, but then they'll say natural. What does that mean? And then they'll like, well, we didn't do any additives, but the chemical's
Mm.
already in it, right? They didn't add it in there. It was already in the fabric when they made the garment, right? So they get away with it that way. So, I could go more and more, but I do want to leave people with hope. And like you said earlier, you want people to be, fearful, fear-based. And I look at it this way, I'm a big horse guy. So when a horse gets scared, there's different ways that it spooks, right? One is going straight up, and the other is doing a side step, and another one is bucking out. So when the horse goes straight up, the way to get through it is to move the energy forward,
Mm.
and that's what I'm trying to do with this. Like, yeah, I got to tell you all the bad stuff, tell you the
Mm.
truth about things. And
Absolutely.
you're gonna go up like this, but then I'll tell you some solutions and where we're going with it. Because I'm not leaving you hanging, and
No.
we're gonna move forward with that because there is hope. But we have to work together and all want this together because it will take community. It's not just Livia and her campaign or Susie and her campaign and Lucy Siegel and her book. It's everyone together saying, hey, this is a public health issue and we're not going to lie still or lot turnover and we're not going to forget about it and we're going to move
Mm.
forward in this. And yes, you need to list those ingredients so I can decide as a consumer whether I want to take the risk and wear that t-shirt, that's dyed with synthetics that has chromium and petroleum-based, toxins in it. And, or do I want something that's undyed? And then you
Mm.
can make that choice. But right now you can't even, I went into a store yesterday and they had these tan versions, like, which one's undyed? And they had no idea.
Mm.
And it's just like, and I met with a brand who has organic indigo dyed sheeting and they sent me a pair and they're like, will you talk about this next time interview? And I'm like, well, let me check it out first because I don't sponsor any brands.
Mm.
I don't take money from anyone. And I tested out the sheet. It is dyed with natural indigo, but then they put a waterproofing element on it
Uh,
because it's
the
cotton.
PFAS, there they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't go through the sheet. And I'm like,
Mm.
huh. I go, why'd you do that? They're like, we didn't know. The textile did it. I'm like, well, why the textile do it? And I do know why, because even organic cotton, it holds water. So it could
Mm.
create a mold thing or when you sweat at
Mm-hmm.
night. So that's why I think the best sheeting is hemp. So again, another great solution and answer is like get hemp. I tell people three things you can do. Detergents, everyone can replace them tonight. They could go seventh generation. Ecos, who we interview in our documentary, lists their 6 ingredients. You can use just
Mm.
borax, but it's
Mm.
all same price.
Big fan of borax. That's my
Yeah,
favorite
borax is
go-to.
great.
Yeah.
Super easy to do. That's the reason why the fashion industry is, one of the most toxic. It's not because of manufacturing, as many people think. It's because we
Mm.
wash these synthetic clothes every time we wear them. I
Mm.
wear this hemp shirt 10 times before I wash it. And people are like,
Mm.
oh, Jeff, you smell like a dirty Frenchman. Like they joke, but I'm like, no, I don't. And then they smell and they're like, wow, we can't smell anything. I'm like, yeah, because
Mm.
like right now in the sun, it's like it's porous in nature. It's not
Mm.
holding any smells. And and then second thing is sheeting. So
Mm.
undyed cotton, linen, wool, even wool holds its temperature, and hemp and
Mm.
they're out on the marketplace. And the third thing is intimates. And again, you're going to find everyone claiming everything under the sun, but only don't believe any of it, just undyed. And then
Mm.
natural fibers have no washes on it, no additives. And because the problem is these companies, if they're small like me, they don't have the money to test their end garment. And I
Yeah.
do want to say that it's not their fault to get like we did testing for the documentary, $2,500 to
Mm.
test 5 chemicals in one fabric swatch.
Yeah.
It's a
Try
lot of
get a
money.
small business owner to do that, or a
Yeah,
corporation who again has to answer to a system of profit growth all the
yep.
time and
Our
therefore is always
cons
having to cut corners.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Our consumers. So I think we have to mandate that.
Mm,
and or have a government agency that has all those testing labs and facilities, and it's
mm,
mandatory that it gets tested before it goes to market. That's a future goal, but
yeah.
I think we can get there. It depends what happens next 5 years, what consumers really care about, you know.
Mm,
But I think
yeah.
we'll at least have more options out there and on the table, just like the organic food movement when it took place. So yeah,
Mm,
that's my hope with the documentary. It's like the food ink of the industry. It will really kind of set the bar, let everyone know what's in it and know the
yeah.
science, and then they'll be educated in that in the clothing fashion world, you know.
Oh, well,
So
I think it's commendable what you're doing, Jeff. And how do people most easily find the film and the book worldwide?
sure. So the book's on like Apple and Amazon.
Mm,
The film's not out yet in the public domain. It's in the film festivals right now, but the website's letthembeknaked.com. So it'll keep
yeah.
everything up to
We
date,
will
and it gives
definitely put all the details underneath. Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. It'll give updated options. It gives you hope, like, hey, you could try this or do this, and you know, and that's the goal, is that the more options we find and the more people will drive to do it, the cheaper the, you know,
exactly.
hemp back in the day made all the army uniforms, the cells, the ropes. I mean, it was the cheapest fabric.
Mm,
So
let's make it the cheapest fabric again.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for spending the time. It's been amazing getting to know you. Let them be naked. I've never wanted to take a t-shirt off with a man I only just met more. So well done.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
I wish you
Yeah,
so much luck with getting this out in the world and having a huge impact. And our community is certainly going to be helping you.
amazing. Thank you so much for your support, and lovely to meet you.
I hope you loved today's show as much as I loved bringing it to you. I want to remind you that if you are someone who craves a low tox community that is judgment free, full of empowerment, has health professionals and building health professionals that can support you, as well as me in there answering questions multiple times a week, I want to invite you to join the Low Tox Club. For the price of less than a cup of coffee a month, you have an annual membership for $49 Australian, so it's about $30 US or euro, that allows you to have a member masterclass every single month with a health professional or global expert from the podcast, where we have them to ourselves for an hour to ask questions and deep dive further. You have the beautiful supportive chat group. You have Q&As with me answering questions. We read books and talk about them, and a whole bunch more. You can head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the explore tab, and join the club is the very first option on that list. Of course, we have over 10 evergreen courses that you can jump into anytime, whether it's navigating everyday low tox swaps with our Go Low Tox signature course, whether you have kids and you're wanting to know how to best support them with our Low Tox Kids course, whether you're planning a family and looking at a healthy low tox preconception journey, reducing inflammation, especially the chronic kind, with our Inflammation Ninja course, many other courses. You can again head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the courses tab, and you'll see all of the options, which includes a business course, my Low Tox Method program. A lot of people don't know, but I was doing a lot before starting Low Tox Life in 2009, and I was a business consultant across hospitality, health, retail, and cosmetics. I have been in business consulting for a very long time, so I absolutely adore helping people move into the low tox space or develop their low tox businesses. So that's a way I can support you. And then, of course, there's our wonderful social media communities at Low Tox Life on Instagram, and of course, the website with over 250 gluten-free recipes, blogs, downloadable PDFs to help you navigate wanting to get rid of synthetic fragrances in your school or office. I could go on. So head to lowtoxlife.com, see what takes your interest or fancy, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast community. I love reading your reviews. I appreciate every follow and subscribe, and I want to just remind you to finish off that if there's anything you heard that you found interesting from a medical or scientific perspective, it is intended as education only. Please always chat to a health professional who knows you and your situation best. I'll see you next week. Bye.